let's dive into the conversation about the CEOs and the CXOs of the future. And the crux is that things are changing. They are changing rapidly. And in this rapid changes, what are the new challenges that a CXO would be facing? Right. So let me start with Runam. Runam, if we can have your thoughts on what are the new challenges that the CXOs of the current CXOs are facing, and what the new CXOs of the future will be facing, something which the CXOs of the past may not have faced. Over to you. You're not able to unmute. Okay, my bad, my bad. Hold on. Sorry about that. Yes.
Thank you. Uh, I think that's a very interesting question, and I guess that's really why we're all here. Uh, what are going to be the challenges that face the CXO of tomorrow? Let me start with talking about some of the challenges that are facing us today that we may or may not really have been prepared for in our career so far. And one of those things, like you said correctly just before, is that the landscape is changing very, very quickly. Not just with the advent of AI, though that is a huge game changer, and I'm sure Priya will talk about it, but also with the fact that so many people are, have access to internet, have access to urbanization. um, the world has become a global place, and very correctly so. Let me give you an example of the regulatory landscape, very relevant to our industry and many others. Since the world has become a global space, uh, Indian regulatory systems are finally trying to catch up. Now, innovation moves at a much faster pace. And while the regulatory folks are trying to catch up with innovation, there is a tremendous amount of uncertainty. And CXOs have really got to be on their feet to one, keep pace with what's happening, but also to anticipate what the concerns are that the government is discussing. What are the concerns that could come under regulation tomorrow that don't exist today, and to plan for it. To name a few, right, there is this conversation about how the countries that we share land borders with, the government wants to discourage uh, imports from those nations. And now the fact is that a lot of our components do come from China, Taiwan, etc. So as an industry, a lot of us have to think about how we're going to source and what is going to be the implication. Now, the ideal situation would be if Indian manufacturers were to fill up that gap, but there's going to be a whole space of time between the regulation coming in and someone from the Indian landscape filling in those gaps. And what are you going to do during that period, right? Another example would be a regulation that came. I don't know if people were looking at it. It's very relevant to us as consumers as well. There was a regulation that had come in for the pharma industry, where they said that pharmacos will no longer be allowed to influence doctors in any manner to sell their drugs. Now, this is an extremely important regulation, and I completely back the intent behind it, right? You want doctors to make unbiased decisions when prescribing medicines. But the way the regulation came in would have really put a lot of power in downstream in the hands of chemists who are, firstly, of course, not qualified to prescribe, but also more easily influenced commercially. So, of course, the regulation was rolled back within a day itself, but I'm sure it was a sleepless night for a lot of execs in pharma companies.
Wow.
I'll stop there for comments.
Wow. Two examples where regulation kind of changes the entire landscape in which an organization is operating. And as you rightly said, the CXO would have to be not only just clued into what's happening on the ground, but also be a participant in the process with the government, with other industry, I mean, these are the places where you have to work with the competitor to influence the government to go in the right way. So a very interesting thing. And I think uh, while these challenges have always existed, going forward with the pace of change and the way the changes are happening, whether it is healthcare or any other industry, there will be more of a role of the CEO to play in outside the organization as well as within the organization. So fantastic, Runam. I go over to Priya. Priya, you are absolutely in the industry, which is AI, the talk of the town. And that's one which is rapidly changing way faster than anyone can even comprehend, leave alone catching up. So, how do you see that role and the challenges of the CEO transforming?
Mm. A lot actually. You rightly said, Hemant, we are the thick of things, especially as a developer, as an owner of a proprietary large language model, and being the first ones to do it in the GCC. Currently, our responsibility, not just as my responsibility, not just as a CEO, but kind of trying to set the precedents in the AI industry in this region. It's a big responsibility, right? And then
Yes.
add on to that, being a woman in AI, being a woman in tech in this part of the world adds on to that challenge as well. So one, how do you make yourself heard? How do you make yourself represent a section of the demography in front of not just your customers, but it also in front of people that really matter, the decision makers, and put yourself out there. That is a big challenge that from a personal level as a CEO that I'm facing. And I'm sure this has been a discussion for decades before me as well, or the challenges that female CEOs are facing in any industry. And now look at it as at least in the future, we are thinking that a CEO, a female CEO, will not sit here and say the same thing after 5 to 10 years. So that's one of the major challenges in the AI industry, of course, from a personal CEO point of view. But you're absolutely right. When you're trying to make the impact in the AI industry, be a torchbearer, and you have to be a visionary in ways that we have not been before. So in our case, in Zwag's case, what we have been doing is that we know that this is an industry that's not regulated at all, right? There are regulations in silos. In that case, what do we do? A lot of self-regulation has to happen, and we are trying to be a step ahead than others, right? By creating an ESG framework, by self-regulating, by putting ethical and responsible AI at the forefront. So that kind of, nobody is talking about ESG. There is no rule, or there's no kind of guidance on what frameworks, regulatory frameworks, or ESG frameworks, or governance framework that an AI company in this region should have. So looking at, even when that is not there, you have got to have the vision, also the responsibility to take it on yourself, to be to do it for you, and not just for you, not just for your company, but also for the industry as a whole. I think decisions like these will fall on the CXOs more, because I was listening to His Excellency the Minister of AI and remote work at the Dubai Assembly for Generative AI yesterday, and he was saying that earlier the success formula was, E plus whatever, and then there is disruption. That is electricity to whatever. That is, plug electricity to a carpet, it becomes a treadmill. Plug electricity to your hand fan, it becomes your ceiling fan, so on and so forth. And now that success formula, he was saying, is going to be a bit different, wherein you plug in AI, and then the ability to create, using generative AI to come up with molecules, with cures for medicine, to come up with disruptive innovations, the way your brain works, the brainstorming and everything, right? So it's going to be exponential. The innovation, we hope, is going to be exponential. So how do we kind of use that and leverage that technology to be able to deliver what people are expecting, and so on and so forth. So these kind of decision-making processes will be completely changed, and the CEOs will have to be really clued in to the possibilities and of course the challenges that come up with that.
Lovely. I think regulatory things again came into the conversation, and they are something which is going to be very important for the CXO levels, because it's a huge responsibility. Also because one default on a regulatory thing and your business could come to a standstill. I think the other thing which you mentioned very important was being forward looking and taking steps which no other player is doing, being at the forefront of doing things, uh, assuming your own responsibility. I think it's a very good strategy, simply because at some point in time, regulation will meet those requirements, and when it comes, you are already there. You are ready. While others would be coping up, others will be catching up. You are already there, market ready, without a hitch. So, just being responsible, either environmentally or ethically, can be a business strategy in itself for the CXO of the future. Well, with that, I go to Radhika. Radhika, let me bring you on spotlight. You are literally working with people in their journey towards the CXO position, as well as interacting also with many CXOs through your executive coaching. So, let me put this question in two ways. What is keeping those CXOs awake at night these days? What is those new things which are troubling them? And at the same time, the ones who are on their path to become CXOs, what should they be focusing on? Over to you.
So, yeah, thank you, Hemant, for having me over here. Um, Interesting questions, and most importantly, and thank you, and I quite impressed with a lot of new things which I learned from Priya and Ronam as well. So one of the few things which I have noticed, see, the role of a CXO is very different from what the role of even a mid manager or a senior manager or a senior professional is. Suddenly, from being at the base of the mountain, you go to the top of the mountain, and the entire view changes from there. The constant need to keep pulling yourself out and taking a vision view becomes a very challenging task, because it's very normal to get caught in the everyday routine, and sometimes you do lose the entire bigger perspective. So it's not something which happens all day, but it's something which one has to keep remembering and reminding themselves as to why they are doing what they are doing. That part is the most important aspect, because that kind of becomes a anchor for them to align and come back to questioning, okay, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. So as you asked, what keeps people awake? Of course, people can be awake for different reasons. Now, a few things. The most interesting part of where we are today is the aspect of uncertainty, the aspect of very quick changes. Of course, AI is a contributor to that, and adapting to these changes becomes challenging, because the point is, if you have to just take a demography, there are three sets of people. One, a set of people who have been in the industry for 20 years, who have seen right from Y2K till today, and have grown through the whole space, where slowly, steadily they have been introduced to different aspects and have reached a stage, seen multiple cycles of economic ups and downs, and have reached where they have reached, have a certain perspective to approaching the future. And there is a whole new generation who have directly been put into that platform. We have not seen, really, probably most of us have seen phones in our days, including the ring phones, from then to the digital phones, then to hands free, and today a whole lot of generation don't even know such things existed. It's a museum piece for them. So we are dealing with two different sets of mindsets of people, groups of people, And that is interesting, challenging, as well as very, very. So I deal with both sets of people, and so I see that whole difference in the approach and the attitude. One is like slow and steady, one like no, all go out and let's do it. So that's kind of a challenge which people do face, because in organizations you will have a mix of both in their space. Having said that, the more relevant question could be, how do we deal with this change? What can aspiring CEOs go and get out in this world? So few things. Most important thing is, what is it that I can do? People get caught into a rhythm where people feel that this is only I can do and nobody else can do. And when you get caught in that space, it's very difficult to then cut that pattern, because important thing is, when you want to grow to the next level, ask yourself, am I going to be a high resource candidate or am I going to be a low resource candidate? If I need to be the high resource person, then I need to start doing the high resource level job or outcome or output. Staying here and just wishing for it doesn't help. Start making an action to move to the next level, start delivering at the next level, and then see how the wheel of CXO starts moving for you. So that's a little bit from my side. Over to you, Hemant.
Thank you. Thank you. No, rightly said. I mean, I have also seen this happen where people rise to a certain level and then get stuck. In fact, that reminds me that way back in time when I joined the consulting world, and this was year 2003 or 2005, so almost 18 years ago. And my manager was the one from whom I learned a lot of things about consulting. And he said one of the things which took me a few years to understand. And he had said, people rise to the highest level of their incompetence. And for the life of me, for a few years, I could not understand. And then when I saw it happen, and I realized that, oh, people keep rising based on their performance, and they reach a point beyond which they are either not tapping into their capability or they just don't have the capability. And that's where they get stuck. They've reached their level of incompetence. And there is the other classic. I mean, for those who might have known a bit of Ramayana, you have a character called Jamvan who reminds Hanuman of his true powers, and he's able to tap into his potential only after being reminded. So a coach, a mentor plays a role into such a person's career and kind of kickstarts it all over again. So it's extremely important that you realize that, one, you're not irreplaceable. Two, you should be replaceable. You should be constantly moving and assessing. And as you rightly said, the high level resource versus low level resource, where do you want to be?